Welcome back to my channel, everyone! Alright, without further ado, let us dive straight into the recap of TSUKIMICHI, Moonlit Fantasy Part 37. Alright guys, in the previous video, Makoto, Tomoe, and Asnoval met the Superior Dragon Futsu in the Land of the Dead. Futsu intends to pass down all of her power to Tomoe so that she can focus on managing the Land of the Dead while continuing to search for her first love. Now, in this video, the story focuses on the important negotiation between Makoto and Futsu, which opens a discussion about the inheritance of the Dragon Mother's power, as well as the looming shadow of a major conflict against the goddess. On the other side, the situation in Canawi suddenly turns into a battlefield, with the appearance of Haruka and the involvement of various factions, until Seirit also begins to take their respective positions. Now, let us continue to Part 38. The story begins with Makoto standing in the middle of the pitch-dark Land of the Dead. There is no light, there is no sound, there is only silent emptiness. For a moment, he imagines that if there were small shining stars, this place might look like a beautiful night sky. However, in reality, there is nothing but a void that strangely feels calming. In front of him, Futsu appears in her dragon form. Even so, Futsu herself admits that she is not entirely comfortable staying in that form. Here, something quite interesting is revealed. It turns out that everyone who comes to the Land of the Dead sees a landscape shaped by their own imagination. Asnoval imagines it as a beautiful and peaceful forest. Tomoe sees it as a remote village, suitable for living in seclusion. Meanwhile, Makoto forms a completely empty space with nothing in it, a place that is truly silent, as if for him, tranquility is the absence of everything itself. Futsu then explains that in the Land of the Dead, the scenery can be changed at will. As soon as she gives an example, a simple table and chairs suddenly appear in the middle of the emptiness. However, that relaxed atmosphere does not last long. The conversation soon moves toward its true core. Futsu reveals that the main reason for the invitation is actually to meet Tomoe. Makoto is only asked to come along by Asnoval so that he can give his opinion. Hearing that, Makoto's vigilance immediately rises. He fully understands that Futsu is an ancient entity with power equal to Root, and that is not something that can be taken lightly. Seeing Makoto's clearly cautious expression, Futsu tries to ease the mood by offering him the chance to ask any question about the Land of the Dead. However, Makoto is not interested. He firmly states that he does not care about anything else and only wants to know one thing. What exactly is Futsu's plan for Tomoe? In short, Futsu admits that she needs help. She and Tomoe require Makoto's opinion. Makoto and Futsu then engage in a rather tense negotiation. Makoto, who is not someone that easily trusts others, continues to act carefully and with suspicion. On the other hand, Futsu tries to convince him that she is not an enemy. Interestingly, even though the negotiation does not proceed smoothly, Futsu actually seems to enjoy the situation. She even imagines how Root and the goddess would react if they had to negotiate with Makoto. With an enthusiastic tone, Futsu hopes that one day, Makoto will act even more difficult to deal with when facing them, so that Root and the goddess truly feel the struggle. From that, it becomes clear that Futsu's resentment toward the goddess and Root is not something small. Then Futsu moves to the core of her offer. She firmly states that she does not intend to oppose Makoto, and instead wishes to give something beneficial. She intends to transfer all of her power to Tomoe. According to her, her current duty as the manager of souls does not require such immense strength. Keeping power of that magnitude without ever using it feels like a waste. That is why she chooses to hand it over. That power is known as the Mother Earth Silver Dragon, or more commonly referred to as the Dragon Mother. Futsu emphasizes that she will not bind Tomoe with any contract. She only wants to pass down the power without any hidden conditions. A few moments later, while continuing to observe Futsu, Makoto realizes something quite astonishing. There is a strong possibility that Futsu is speaking with Tomoe and Asnoval at the same time. In other words, she is conducting 3 conversations simultaneously. Makoto cannot hold back his sense of admiration for such an ability. Here, Futsu begins to explain more deeply about the power of the Dragon Mother. She describes it as the ability to understand and manipulate the dragon veins of the world. Makoto, who does not fully understand the concept of Feng Shui, can only imagine it as the Earth's energy, or something similar to ley lines. However, Futsu admits that such an explanation is still too simple. She then describes the dragon veins as massive streams of power resembling rivers deep within the world, formed from the friction of souls that continuously move between the world of the living and the world of the dead. In truth, Tomoe is not the only one qualified to receive Futsu's power. Root is also worthy of receiving it. However, because of the long and complicated history between Futsu and Root, it is almost impossible for Futsu to ask Root to accept such an inheritance. That is why the final choice falls upon Tomoe. Futsu then expresses her belief that one day Makoto will almost certainly go to war against the goddess. The power she intends to grant, according to her, should be able to protect Tomoe when that day arrives. However, there is one important condition. She needs Makoto's approval as Tomoe's master. Without Makoto's permission, the transfer of power cannot take place. On the other hand, Tomoe herself has already expressed her willingness. For her, as long as the power can be used to protect Makoto, she does not hesitate to accept it. Makoto ultimately agrees, of course with conditions. He firmly states that if anything happens to Tomoe as a result of the power transfer, he will not show leniency toward Futsu. Even though Makoto accepts the offer, he still harbors doubt in his heart. For him, it is almost unreasonable that someone would suddenly give away such tremendous power without expecting anything in return. However, as if she can read his thoughts, Futsu responds immediately, without Makoto needing to voice his suspicion. She admits that nothing is truly free. In exchange, Futsu asks Makoto to resolve the issue currently unfolding in the city of Canawi, particularly the major conflict within the family there. At first, the problem in Canawi is not too concerning. However, the situation changes once the heroes become involved. Their involvement begins to give Futsu a headache. Moreover, the power of the heroes ultimately comes from the goddess. That means every action they take has the potential to carry significant consequences. Futsu also explains that the nation of Laurel deeply cherishes the wise, those who come from another world. Whether they are heroes or not, as long as they are considered wise, the country of Laurel will respect and care for them without discrimination. That is why Futsu is worried that if the situation in Canawi worsens because of the hero's interference, the impact could be extremely serious for Laurel. Moreover, Tomoki continues to use his charm to influence and brainwash many people. For Futsu, that is already like a dangerous disease that must not be allowed to spread any further. That is why she wants Makoto to intervene. She also assures him that the Origin will assist, so Makoto does not have to face everything alone. In the end, an agreement is reached. With a clear exchange in place, Makoto feels that this transaction becomes more fair and balanced. As a closing remark, Futsu gives one final warning. Makoto's arrival in Canawi has most likely already triggered a chain of rebellions in the surrounding cities. After that, the darkness around them slowly fades, and the scenery returns to the original room, where Asnoval and Tomoe have been waiting. At a glance, there is no striking change in either Tomoe or Asnoval. Considering that Mio and the others have surely been waiting for quite some time, Makoto decides that this is the right moment to return. In his heart, he only hopes that this journey back will not be accompanied by any strange traps. On the other side, a different atmosphere can be seen in Kougetsu's room. He is seriously racking his brain. The presence of the Kuzunoha company has thrown many things into chaos. In his mind, the existence of that company seems to be deliberately arranged by Seirit, and that fact makes things even more difficult for him. Many of his plans are beginning to fall apart. Even his trump cards, Tomoki and Haruka, are not proceeding as expected. Kougetsu realizes that he must not act hastily. He has to carefully construct a proper strategy. However, in the middle of that deadlock, a shocking report suddenly arrives. A mysterious group launches an attack on restaurant Chihiro Manrai, and even more astonishing, Haruka is seen among the attacking forces. Kougetsu is immediately stunned. This sudden nighttime assault is completely beyond his calculations. A situation that is already chaotic now becomes even more confusing. In the worst possible scenario, this incident could lead to the downfall of the Osakabe family, a possibility he absolutely does not want to face. On the other hand, Seirit is also surprised when she receives a report that war has broken out in Canawi, specifically around restaurant Chihiro. Even so, instead of panicking, she considers this situation advantageous for her side. Calmly, she begins to arrange her next moves, gives several orders to her subordinates, and even firmly states that if Makoto needs assistance, they must fulfill that request without hesitation. The situation has now truly entered a phase of major upheaval. There are dirty schemes from the Empire, internal conflict within Canawi, and the involvement of various factions whose interests intersect with one another. For Seirit, all of that feels like a grand stage that is fascinating to watch as events unfold. Meanwhile, Lime feels irritated. He notices a pattern that seems to repeat itself. Every time Makoto becomes involved in an incident, the city where it happens almost always turns into a ghost town, with the residents disappearing without a trace. Fortunately, the staff of restaurant Chihiro Manrai move quickly. They successfully intercept the first wave of attacks and evacuate the guests perfectly. However, Lime's tension does not subside. He realizes that the movements of these rebels are highly organized and clearly have one main target: Iroha. In other words, the Kuzunoha Company and Iroha are now being directly targeted. Lime can only try to hold off the attacks until Makoto and the others return from the labyrinth. Of course, Lime is not alone. Levi stands beside him, both of them on guard, while waiting for the enemy to arrive. Not long after, the silence of the night is broken by the clear voice of a woman. In an instant, the door crumbles into ash without a sound. The mysterious woman immediately asks about Iroha's whereabouts. From the very beginning, Lime has already sensed that something is wrong. If that woman radiates killing intent because of a mother's instinct to reclaim her child, perhaps that can still be understood. However, what he feels is completely different. The killing intent and hostility she directs toward Lime and Levi are born from an abnormal love toward someone else, not toward her own daughter. For Lime, that feeling is disgusting. At his side, a dangerous smile appears on Levi's face. As a Scylla, she naturally has the instinct to hate and kill humans. However, now that desire only awakens when she faces a truly strong human. And the woman standing before them clearly meets that standard. Seeing the terrifying aura radiating from Levi, Lime can only hope that everything does not end badly. He quickly assesses the situation. Even though the number of enemies reaches dozens, only this woman is truly dangerous. His plan is simple: stall for time and force the enemy to reveal all of her abilities until Makoto returns. However, that plan collapses in an instant. Without any warning, Levi's right arm is severed and thrown into the air. Lime is stunned. He does not see even the slightest movement from the woman, only her mouth moving. Levi certainly feels pain, but that pain immediately turns into blazing anger. Lime thinks hard, trying to understand what kind of technique can cut off Levi's arm that quickly. Without hesitation, Lime and Levi immediately counterattack together using their respective weapons. However, the woman easily deflects every strike. In the middle of the battle, she finally introduces herself. The woman is Haruka. Lime continues to launch attacks with his katana, but Haruka remains able to parry them effortlessly with her naginata. She even casually belittles Lime's skill, calling him an amateur in using a katana. She briefly offers that if Lime is willing to join Tomoe, she will teach him how to use a sword properly. However, Lime rejects the offer outright. Instead, he counters by suggesting that Haruka should join Kuzunoha. According to him, both the Empire and Tomoe can easily be eliminated by Kuzunoha. If Haruka wants to survive, she should join them. Those words truly enrage Haruka. Suddenly, as if struck by an invisible blade, Lime's katana is knocked out of his hand. At the same time, Levi's severed arm has finished regenerating. Now, her arm is covered in hard scales that can function as both weapon and shield. Even though he loses his weapon, Lime feels slightly satisfied. His provocation successfully draws out Haruka's emotions. Moreover, with full concentration, he finally manages to see Haruka's hand blur slightly when she launches an attack. Her speed is still far beyond normal limits, but at least Lime begins to read her pattern and rhythm. Now his goal is only one: stall for time. As long as Iroha and the guests can be evacuated safely, and Makoto returns in time, there is still hope to turn the situation around. Haruka, whose emotions are already ignited, retaliates with her own provocation. She mocks Makoto and calls him weak. Those words immediately ignite Levi's anger. In a sharp tone, Levi reminds her that Tomoe once nearly died at Makoto's hands. If anyone is weak, it is Tomoe, not Makoto. Hearing that fact, Haruka appears shocked. However, that shock quickly turns into even greater fury when she realizes that Tomoe was almost killed by Makoto. Now both of Haruka's hands grip her black and white naginata. The aura radiating from her changes drastically. The pressure she releases makes Lime and Levi recall the two strongest entities in Asura. For Levi, that aura reminds her of Mio's rampage. Meanwhile, Lime recalls Tomoe's deadly strikes. Both of them immediately realize that the situation has reached an extremely critical point. Without hesitation, they prepare to unleash all of their abilities in order to survive. Meanwhile, outside the hotel, Makoto has just arrived and witnesses the chaos that has engulfed Canawi. Smoke rises from various corners of the city, accompanied by panicked screams in the distance. This is already the third time he has seen a major city turn into a battlefield, after the Academy City and the capital of Limia. Strangely, this time his feelings are far more numb. His heart no longer trembles as it once did when witnessing such destruction. Makoto's thoughts are interrupted when Tomoe stands beside him, now carrying the newly inherited power of the Dragon Mother. Even though her magical power and skills have increased drastically, her physical appearance remains the same as before. Mio and Tomoe both look at the smoke-filled city. However, Mio's reaction is completely different. She is not worried about the condition of the city at all. The only things on her mind are the soy sauce shop, the miso shop, and other cooking ingredient stores. For Mio, the most important matter is ensuring that the supply for cooking remains safe. Makoto immediately activates Sakai across the entire city to understand the situation. After obtaining a clear overview, he quickly assigns tasks to his subordinates. Tomoe is ordered to immediately head toward Lime and Levi's location and assist them. At the same time, Makoto is surprised when he realizes that his students are actually in Canawi. He does not understand how Izumo and the others can be there. So, that is the recap of Part 37 from TSUKIMICHI, Moonlit Fantasy.